What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another week of NFL picks. We are now officially, a quarter of the way through the season. The first month of the season is done. It's officially October 1st. It is officially October. Um, and this is really the point now where we know what a lot of these teams are made of. We know, the kind of the state that they're in. And now you really enter that portion of the season that you really look at it can make or break a lot of these teams. Got a solid slate of games this upcoming week. So without further ado, let's get into it. Last week had my best week of the season. Went 10-6 overall record, over 500 now at 33-31. Lock of the week 3-1, and upset of the week 0-4. Still looking for to get one upset of the week right. The teams on buys this week. First week with some buys this year. We got 4 teams on bye weeks. The Titans, they're coming off of a win in Miami on Monday night. The Chargers, obviously, they're really beaten up. The bye comes at a pretty good time for them and someone like Justin Herbert to heal. The Lions, man, they just got an electric win. They're on fire. They go on a bye week. And the Eagles, and I think we can all agree, they got some work to do over this bye week. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Starting off with Thursday night football, it is my Atlanta Falcons at home, third straight home game versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Matt Ryan is going into the Ring of Honor. Obviously, not going to talk too much about it. I'm going to make my preview on Wednesday, tomorrow. But I am going to go ahead and pick us to win. I will say, I do think this is a game that could go either way. I would not be necessarily shocked if Tampa won. It's not like, I'm not giving them a chance at all. But I just feel like, if we come out and, we take care of business and, we really take advantage, and obviously it's a short week, but you take advantage of Tampa's weaknesses, then I feel like you're going to be in a good spot to pick up the win here. So I'm going to go ahead and give us the win. Next game we have here, and it is a London game across the pond. We have the New York Jets facing the undefeated Minnesota Vikings, a Vikings team that is obviously very electric with Sam Darnold and that offense. You have to give credit to what Kevin O'Connell is doing over there, man. It's really something special when you consider, all the factors. Facing a Jets team that came off of a really ugly loss versus Denver. It feels like obviously the Vikings are due to lose a game at some point. I feel like they're the better team though here. I do. I feel like they're on fire, obviously. I feel like their offense is more in sync. I still feel like, Aaron Rodgers has to get that Jets offense, programmed to him. But overall, I feel like, that this is going to be a close game. I just think Minnesota comes away with it, probably like a field goal, but I think Minnesota comes away with it. They do just enough to remain undefeated, and they go to 5-0 on the season. Heading into our 1 o'clock slate here, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Chicago Bears. Interesting game. Chicago, it's up and down, but they are 2-2. They are 500. A Carolina team that, the offense has looked better with Andy Dalton, but honestly, I still think we can agree Carolina probably isn't where everyone, where obviously at least they want to be. I I do got to give this to the Bears. There is a scenario where I could see Carolina winning, but I feel safer picking the Bears here. Feels like, a game you feel more confident that they'll be able to come out and take care of business. It is in Soldier Field. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this one to the Panthers. Next game we have here, the Cleveland Browns, and they've really been teetering the past few weeks. They are really, really in need of, something, anything, any hope. Going to Landover, Maryland to face maybe honestly the hottest team in the NFL right now, with the exception of the Vikings in the Washington Commanders. Washington has won their last 3 games. Jaden Daniels has looked like an absolute superstar. And there's obviously a lot of excitement, and there's going to continue to be. Washington is a really good team, I think. I thought they would be before the season started, and so far, I didn't think it would be this early, though. But so far, they've kind of proven me right. However, I feel like, Cleveland is due to get a win, and Washington's going to drop one of these games. They're feeling themselves. They are a new team, young team, young quarterback. Cleveland is really desperate. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick Cleveland as my upset of the week. I think that Cleveland goes into Washington. I think that Washington maybe is going to be caught off guard. And I think Cleveland's going to go in there with a sense of urgency to pick up the win and, at least try to get their season somewhat back on track. Washington coming down to earth a little bit. Next game we have here, battle of 2 1-3 teams in the AFC. It's the 1-3 Dolphins and the 1-3 Patriots. The Dolphins have not looked good at all this season. Outside of the very end of that Jacksonville game that they pulled off, they haven't looked good versus Buffalo. They haven't looked good versus Seattle. They haven't looked good versus Tennessee. Ever since you saw Tua go out, Miami has not looked good. And going into Foxborough, you obviously hope to change that. But, even though the Patriots have lost a lot of games, a good bit of these games, they've at least been able to be somewhat respectable. And now the last few weeks, it's kind of been more challenging. But I feel like New England is the better team right now. And I feel like they're going to get the win in probably a low-scoring ball game. But I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this one to New England here. Next game we have another divisional matchup, this time of the AFC South. The 2-2 Colts, their quarterback situation is uncertain. Honestly, I think it is in the best interest right now if Joe Flacco does start for them. But they're heading down to Duval County, and they're taking on the only team in the NFL who has not gotten a win yet, the Jacksonville Jaguars. A Jacksonville team that, there were a lot of expectations for just a few years ago. You finally think out of this realm of darkness, only to be 0-4 this year. But here's the interesting thing. And, how I'm going to categorize this game might confuse some, but hear me out. Indianapolis, I don't believe, has won in Jacksonville now, and I want to say over a decade, or it's right at a decade. There's just something about it. They do not play well in Jacksonville. I think that's going to maintain. And it was, honestly, I'm not going to lie, it was kind of hard to see a lock of the week because you could see a lot of these games going either way. But just based off that, and Jacksonville is in desperate need to just find a way to win a game. I'm going to say this is my lock of the week. I think Jacksonville has to win this game. I think historically they are favored in this game. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this one to the Jaguars. Next game we have here, this is going to be a pretty good game. Probably the best game of the early window. 2 3-1 teams in the AFC. 2 teams at the top of the AFC. The Buffalo Bills and the Houston Texans. Definitely a matchup made for prime time. Stephon Diggs, Little revenge game feeling, even though it's not in Buffalo still. Getting a shot at a revenge game. You know he's going to take it personal. Buffalo, they got dominated by Baltimore. Houston is 3-1, but honestly, they haven't looked the most impressive. It still feels like they could get in sync as well. Houston being at home, it kind of is tough to pick this game, but Houston being at home, I'm going to give them the edge in this one. I do think Stephon Diggs, he's going to have at least a few big catches, and CJ Stroud's going to do his thing too. Just the Texans being at home, I think, that's what puts them over the top here. Next game we have here is the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Another division matchup, this time of the AFC North. In Baltimore, the first 2 weeks of the season, they look pretty shaky, even though you can honestly make the argument that they could have easily won both those games. They lost by a toe in Kansas City. I don't know how they lost that game to the Raiders. But these past 2 weeks, they've came out, they've dominated their opponents. And I think with Cincinnati, you did get a win last week. Obviously, you want to make a big statement with a division win. But I think Baltimore's rolling right now. And I just think this is one of those instances, Cincinnati, you're just trying to find your feeding again. Typically, they have had struggles against Baltimore. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick Baltimore here to pick up the win. Just feels like they're the better team at this point. That running game is really going. And if they get that running game going, it's very hard to stop them. Heading into the late window, another division matchup. There's a lot of division matchups, especially in the AFC here. The Raiders and Broncos matchup in the AFC West, 2-2 teams that honestly, you really don't know how to feel about it. Just feels like they're there and that word mid. It feels like they're mid. Ultimately, this kind of is a tough matchup to pick. Just based off, you could see this game going either way. But I base this really kind of just off what team I think, you look at and say you feel more comfortable with. And I feel like Denver, even though Vegas is not good either, Denver still hasn't grown to do it, Bo Nix. I feel like ultimately they're going to be the better team. But right now, I do think Vegas is in a position to get the win. Go over 500, shockingly enough. But, they get the win here in the Mile High. Next game we have here. And, this was honestly, it's another divisional matchup. It's San Francisco and Arizona. It feels like at least a third of the games this week are division matchups. San Francisco, Arizona, this was an interesting game to pick for me. I'm going to go with the 49ers here, but I'm not going to lie. I don't really, have the guts to do it, but I feel like the Cardinals may be able to pull this game out. That's just kind of a feeling I get. This could be the type of game they pull out. I don't think Arizona is an awful team. At least if you would have asked me heading into last week, I wouldn't have thought they were. Last week kind of did change a lot, but at the same time, Washington is a pretty damn good team, we figured out. So I am going to have to go with the 49ers winning here. I do think if they get things rolling early, it's going to be hard to stop them. If Arizona can play a tough all game, I definitely think they got a chance. Next game we have here, the New York Giants heading to Seattle to face the Seahawks. Seahawks just suffered their first loss of the season. Giants also suffered a loss. Both of them were in prime time. It being in Seattle, this is kind of another game where maybe you're less confident, but you could maybe see an upset happening and the Giants winning. But I think the Seahawks ultimately pull it off. I think they got the better team. They're more in sync. It feels like to me, and they're at home too. They love playing in front of those 12s. So I'm going to have to go ahead, give this to Seattle. Next game we have here, the Green Bay Packers and the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, they're 1-3. I don't think many would have expected that. Green Bay is 2-2. Very tough loss versus Minnesota, where they did fight back. You got to give them credit there, but they did fight back. This is another one where I'm going to give the Rams a win here because I feel like they really need to get a win. It feels like to me, they are better than what their record says, but it feels like it's time for them to go get a win. Green Bay is still showing some struggles they have to put together. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give the Rams a home win here, getting to 2-3 on the year. Sunday Night Football live from Pittsburgh. It's the Cowboys and Steelers, maybe the two most historic franchises in the NFL. I tell you, this was a pretty tough game to pick when I was contemplating it. I was thinking about the Steelers. I was thinking about the Cowboys, went back to the Steelers, went back and forth and back and forth. Ultimately, I am going to pick the Cowboys. I wanted to pick the Steelers based off of, just really kind of my gut feeling. But logic wins here. Logic tells me Dallas is the better team. Dallas, if you get CeeDee Lamb rolling, there's not too many people that can stop that connection. Is there finally somewhat of a blueprint out on how to stop Justin Fields in this new, Arthur Smith offense after 4 weeks? I think that's another thing you got to think about. It just, to me, even though I can absolutely see Pittsburgh winning this game, it just feels like Dallas, they're going to come in here and they're going to get a win. And then Monday night, live from Arrowhead, it's Monday Night Football. It's the New Orleans Saints and it's the undefeated Chiefs. But to be completely honest, they don't feel undefeated. It feels like a Chiefs team that easily could have dropped some of these games. And I feel like this is going to be another really close game. I think the Saints, we've kind of figured out, taking all bias out, they're a team that really plays to their opponent's level. And I think this is going to be another case. You see them play to their opponent's level. You're going to, see Clint Kubiak, I think, call a pretty good game. I think it could definitely turn into an offensive battle. But I got to go with the Chiefs in the end just because it is their house. They're the best team in the world. I just don't think, the Saints are going to be able to pull it off. But I honestly do think this will be our game of the week. I feel like this is going to be a really good game. But with that being said, another week in the books. Obviously, very exciting, for this next Sunday, this next slate of games as we move on in this season. And I will see you all in the next one.